Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Madeline No, and we want to welcome you to another NetHope Solutions Center webinar. Today, we'll be learning about Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership, otherwise known as REAP. And before we get started, I would like to go over a few housekeeping guidelines for the session today. Please help us keep this interactive. Post any questions you have in the Zoom chat window for our Q&A and discussion sessions. Also, we will have opportunities to ask your questions during the session. Please use the raised hand tool if you would like to speak and ask your question during the presentation. We'll have opportunities for that. Also, look for a follow-up email with a link to the recording for this session and the presentation slides and other information later today. Also, we have a webinar satisfaction survey that we would like you to take just a few minutes to complete at the end of the session. Your feedback is very important to us, so we hope that you will go ahead and take a few minutes for that. And with that, I would like to introduce our speakers from REAP, Ben Webster, Head of Secretariat, as well as Emma Flaherty, Thematic Lead for Implementation. And later in the presentation, we will hear from speakers Montserrat Barroso, Program Specialist for REAP at the World Food Program, Mark Harvey, CEO from Resurgence, Isaac Malam, Director, Nexus Platform from the Nexus Somalia Consortium, and Claudia Time, who is the Director, Strategic Market Development at AXA XL, as well as a member of the Insurance Development Forum Operations Committee. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Emma and Ben to take over the presentation.
Hi, thanks everybody for coming. I'm just getting our slides up. Thanks for joining us today. We have a nice small group, so I hope we'll have lots of interaction and we'll be able to share with you answers to all the questions you have that are relevant to you, your organization, and your work. I'm going to pass over to my colleague Ben, who will start us off with a brief introduction to the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership, who we are, what we do, what we're aiming to achieve by 2025, and how we think that you maybe could be involved. After that, we'll hear from a really wide range of our partners. So we have partnerships, as Ben will explain, across many different sectors, and we have 4 really interesting panelists to speak to our work today. And I will introduce them to you to them after Ben gives us the overview of where we are as REAP. So Ben, over to you. Hopefully you can see the presentation.
Thanks, Emma. Yes, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Really good to be with you today. So allow us to introduce the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership, or REAP. What is Risk-Informed Early Action? Well, what we are talking about is action that is taken ahead of a hazard. We could have the next slide, please, Emma, which is predicated on a forecast or risk analysis that's been conducted, which helps to mitigate or reduce the impact of a particular hazard. So there's been huge developments in recent years in terms of early warning, forecasting capacities and capabilities, risk analytics, and particularly within the humanitarian sector, there have been excellent progress in terms of turning those early warnings into early action ahead of a hazard, so that people can be protected in their communities. And the early evidence demonstrates already that this saves lives and livelihoods. It is protecting development gains. It's a much more cost-effective way rather than reactively responding after an event. And it's more dignified, it's faster, cheaper, and in many senses, something of a no-brainer. So why has this not already been taken to scale? So far, the projects and programs have been at a pilot level, and we are not yet seeing the systemic shift towards risk-informed early action. And that's precisely why the Risk-Informed Early Action Partnership was launched in 2019 at the UN Climate Action Summit to start bringing together the humanitarian community with the development community and the climate community across governments, civil society actors, private sector, international organizations. And as a partnership, the convening partners decided to identify some big targets that can really help to catalyze and mobilize the different stakeholders involved. So next slide, please. The convening actors were across those different communities as mentioned. We have 15 convening countries and governments involved, UN agencies, the Red Cross, Red Crescent, civil society actors as well, a number of NetHope members. And these convening partners, as I mentioned, arrived at some targets. So the targets, next slide please, Emma, are articulated here. Target 1 is around countries integrating their climate change adaptation laws, policies and plans with the disaster risk management side as well, so that we can work across timescales and really see these approaches embedded in national policies and plans. Target 2 is around linking the finance and delivery mechanisms at the global level with effective early action plans, so that we can see finances that trigger by early action plans that deliver action on the ground. And targets 3 and 4 are around improving the early warning systems so that they are designed with what's traditionally been known as last mile communities, but switching that around so that the communities are actually the first consideration when designing these early warning systems. Target 4 has a particular emphasis on heat waves as well, because we recognize that this will be an increasingly prevalent hazard or threat in the years to come, and the convening partners in 2019 decided to make this an explicit hazard where we want to make further progress. So Emma, next slide please. These were the 3 drivers of change that the partnership have identified. One is around that enabling country level leadership of early action. We really want to ensure governments are front and center, being able to take action on the ground. We recognize that we need this global commitment on policy and practice, and I mentioned this systemic shift that we want to help create by bringing these different stakeholders together. At the moment, we're doing some work to try and analyze what constitutes a policy enabling environment. How can we facilitate this rapid scale up of early warning, early action? And finally, this marketplace function. So partners decided that they want to try and convene different stakeholders to match the demand and the capacity gaps on the ground with the supply, with the resources at the international level. So these are the main drivers of change that have been identified. And I'll hand over to Emma to explain a bit more about what partners can expect from REAP.
Great, thanks, Ben. And of course, as I'm trying to move to my slide, I'm having some problems. So yeah, the major strands of work, what does this all mean? We have these targets, we all understand what the problem is with regard to the increasing frequency, severity and sheer scale of the climate crisis. So what are the areas of work that REAP will support its partners on? The first is that we want to generate political momentum. We want to make sure that the relevant actors, from governments to donors to international organizations, CSOs, the private sector, and most importantly, communities, are adopting risk-informed early action approaches as a default. We want to use events, high-level political advocacy, communications, enabling tools to really drive ambition around this and increase demand for risk-informed early action and anticipatory approaches. We want to create an enabling environment. Our job as an organization is very similar to NetHope. It's not our job to police or manage or dictate to our members. It's more to understand what do they need from us in order to move towards this vision that we have for 2025. Some of the things that we're doing around that, we're developing a MEL framework. Of course, with these kind of big numbers, you need big commitments to make sure you're doing it and doing it correctly. We are working on different strands of policy work with our partners and through our partners. And we work very closely with other initiatives such as the Global Commission on Adaptation, people working on Sandai, various elements of the humanitarian sector, and of course organizations such as yourself, to make sure that we can align as much as possible with the other initiatives that are complementary. And you'll hear from Later in the call, you'll hear from people like the Insurance Development Forum, who for years have been working on how can we change the way that we pay for disasters to be more efficient and effective and dignified. So we're, of course, trying to align with agendas like that. And also we're seeking to influence donors and other policymakers to make early action the de facto way of acting, to not wait for these hazards to hit. And then the other function, as Ben mentioned, is the marketplace function. Now, we're conscious that when we're speaking to private sector actors, that marketplace means something quite specific. And we've often said that maybe we should have called it the partner place. But this is an area where we really kind of, I suppose the main thing that we're trying to do is convene a really broad section of partners. So we have partners from public and private, climate, development, and humanitarian across the silos, because climate change doesn't really care about our silos. And we want to bring them together in a way that, you know, helps us have the most comprehensive approach to managing risk, financing protective actions, and sharing early warnings. So the marketplace, we will try to convene it around countries predominantly, but also around specific issues. So at the moment, as Ben mentioned, we're coordinating actors together on heat to bring better coherence for and hopefully better and more consistent action across the science community, the development community, policy and advocacy actors, private sector, and everything in between. So we will, yeah, as I said, focus on specific context, but also focus on specific issues. And generally speaking, in REAP, we want to be quite agile and opportunistic and responsive to the needs of our partners. Obviously, we would like to have as broad an even broader partnership, and one of the ways that we try to encourage people to join is that we are not, it's not difficult to join. We don't want to be another bureaucratic, top-down, very monologue versus dialogue and administratively burdened organization. We want to be a dynamic partnership. So first of all, we make it a bit easier than these other initiatives to join. But when you do join, what do you get? Well, it brings together like-minded entities. We're bringing together these communities, these desperate communities of practice in a way so that we can become more than the sum of our parts. We aim to provide a platform to showcase good practice and evidence, and also more constructive learning, so that we can learn from each other's mistakes, but also bring other people, learn from each other's successes and mistakes, but also bring other people on board, like the countries, the climate vulnerable countries. We provide access to a different range of partnership. We've seen so far in our we've been alive for 2 years, but functioning for probably just over a year. And we've had such interesting conversations. We can bring together, you know, people working in a climate department of a small island state in the Caribbean with drought specialists working for WFP in Africa, and bring in risk modelers from academic institutions, and we just can bring together a really interesting group of people to come up with innovative solutions, because business as usual is just not really going to work for the challenge at hand. The other thing is that we try to be really proactive in connecting gaps in capacity and demands. We want to do kind of, I suppose, shared diagnostics or shared symptom checking and problem solving as a group around the themes or countries, and figure out how we can bring people together. But also, if we hear, you know, about a NetHub member that is doing really interesting thing on community messaging in a certain country, we would suggest connecting you to other people working in that area. And the other thing we try to do is provide kind of some higher level leadership in terms of identifying the critical actions that are needed to take early action to scale, and making the case for it, and also mobilizing the necessary resources and support. So a few milestones in 2021, we launched the REAP Framework for Action. We'll share all of these documents with you after this presentation, but we've launched the Framework for Action, which for us is the strategic, well, we have a strategic vision, but this is the framework by which we kind of outlined what we hope is a very robust and convincing argument about why early action is non-negotiable, that the question is not why early action, but how can I do it? And we outlined that in terms of our different partners and our different targets. We've now pulled together a high-level governing board representing the kind of broad church of our constituents. We held a closed-door pledging conference in collaboration with the Wilton Park earlier this summer. We're developing monitoring and evaluation strategy. We're constantly fine-tuning the commitments that we have for partners, the commitments that we think are needed for targets, and using that to plot out our course to 2025, but also help make it easier for potential new partners to understand how they can contribute. And every potential partner certainly has something valuable to contribute. We're working towards COP26, like many people are, and that is going to be a huge landmark for us, where we hope to secure political and practical operational commitments towards this agenda for 2025. So that's the hard sell on REAP, but I always find it much more interesting to hear from people, what does this look like in practice? So today we put together a really interesting group of our partners representing. First, we'll have WFP as a humanitarian and development programming specialist, but also an existing NetHope member and an extremely important partner of REAP. After that, we'll hear from Resurgence, which is a super interesting collaborative approach, or collaborative networked approach to driving early warnings closer to the ground, closer to the people who are affected by them. And we'll then hear from the Insurance Development Forum, one of our biggest and most important, well, nobody's more important, one of our biggest private sector partners, and also a member of the REAP governing body. And then finally, we'll hear from the Nexus Consortium Somalia. And this is to hear about where all this talk and policy and ambition, where it really matters, where the needs are, and what people are doing on the ground to take early action and have it owned by communities and people who are most affected by it. So I just want to we might just pop on to, we were going to leave a bit of space for questions and answers now, but I feel like we've bombarded you so far with the boring information. I think now if we move into the partner information and updates, and then we can have lots of space for questions and answers. And please do ask any questions, any answers, any comments that you want in the chat box. We have a nice small group, and we can really tailor everything for you based on what you want to hear from us. So I will give you a break from me now. I will ask Montserrat, our colleague Montserrat Barroso, would you mind turning on your camera for a minute so we can see her? Montse is an FBF, or forecast-based finance specialist with WFP, and also perhaps WFP's most valuable contribution to REAP, because she supports us with some of her time as well. So Montse, over to you to talk about WFP's role in anticipatory action.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, thanks, Emma. Thanks for the introduction. My name, as you know, is Montserrat Barroso. I'm working with the REAP Secretariat, but I'm the WFP person working in the climate change unit as part of the FBF, forecast-based financing unit. I'm not going to present the WFP per se, because I'm sure that most of you, please go to the first slide. I'm sure that most of you know WFP, or maybe for sure we have been working already together in some of the emergencies, so you're familiar with the telecom cluster, or the logistic cluster, or the food security cluster, and only any of the work that we are already doing. But I would like to present you today this program that is forecast-based financing, that is so great contribution to the REAP per se, where we are just supporting this change in the approach. As I'm just, you can just read it based on this the development impact of on the risk analytic reports, based the shift in the way that we are approaching the risk. We are changing from managing the disasters to managing the risk per se. So just instead of providing myself some information, I would like you to see one video, a very short one of 2 minutes, so you can see the way that WFP is working in this side. Can you click on the video, please?
If there's any tech issues here, they're entirely my responsibility, not Montse's, but let's see. We should be starting now. Bear with us. Okay.
It is. You need to change the screen, Emma, I think. It comes in Explorer. No, you need to go to the Internet Explorer, or where the video is shown, displayed.
Sorry, Muncie, I think you might need to continue with the presentation.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I wanted just to have a look through the video, but it's not. It seems not possible. It's the way that WFP works and what FBF means per se is the action ahead of the crisis and how finances are activated to be able to protect population ahead of the crisis. So the three main actions that WFP is committed towards this risk-informed early action, risk-informed early action partnership. There are three main aspects that we just need to highlight. Is the sustainability of the approach. It's not only just to activate funds ahead of the disaster, that the sustainability means that we need to build the systems at government level to make it sustainable in the medium and long term as well. Is the scalability. Most of the approaches that we have, the program per se, it was in pilot mode till recent years. Now we need to scale up and to make the programs bigger in terms of beneficiaries targeted, but not only. We need to support additional countries as well, and even joint action. Now, this for that the main actions that we are taking towards that is just building the technical assistance facilities. So we are supporting not only WFP, but most of the partners, governments, to develop these sustainable anticipatory action programs. We are building a flexible funding mechanism internally in WFP, but even some of the humanitarian partners, they have already this mechanism available. We want to build this at government level as well, and we are supporting this when we are talking about building systems, so the flexible funding is able to scale up the approach. But even most important, that Emma was referring as well to that, is the monitoring, the evaluation, and the learning. We are supporting the evidence creation for this risk-informed early action approach, and we are supporting and advocating for common frameworks for measuring the impacts of this approach. Recently, we had a study that it was made by CDP in Bangladesh, showing the main protection values or the main protection benefits that this approach is having in the population. We can share the linkages later if you are interested as well. And of course, joint action. Joint action is why we are member of the RIP and why we are advising additional partners to join the partnership as well. We need jointly to promote and support the scale up of the anticipatory action approach. It's a new model of a new way of doing things in the humanitarian world, but we need additional partners as well, not only from the humanitarians, but from the climate, from the scientific, from the private sector, to join this direction as well. And even the importance as well of the coordination, not only at this global level for global advocacy, but at regional and local level as well, is where we need to just focus our work to support governments in building systems towards this approach to protect the population. So over to you, Emma. Thanks for the opportunity and happy to answer questions in a later stage.
I'm not sure what, thank you very much, Monse, and I'm not sure what happened with the video playing there. It seems to have been playing multiple times for me, but not for you. So if any Net Hope members have like really basic IT skills training that they could enroll me in, that would be helpful. We will provide a link. There'll be a full readout from this, and also maybe we can put a link to that video in the chat here as well, Monse, because it is a really great overview of the case for anticipatory action and what WFP are doing about it. So sorry about that. Hopefully that'll be the last hiccup. So next up we have Mark Harvey from Resurgence to talk about the Durajo project. Resurgence is a really, really interesting organization that I think very nicely summarizes some of the things that we would like to see while bringing together communities like the REAP community and Net Hope. So Mark, if you're there, if you wouldn't mind sticking your camera on for a minute just so we can see who we're talking to.
Can you, yep, can you see me?
Yes, there you are. Over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you, Emma. Yes, I'm more than happy to talk about Daraja, noting that Daraja was kind of born in the autumn of 2019. I was actually at the UN Climate Summit when REAP was launched, so the history of Daraja does parallel somewhat the evolution of REAP. We have been focusing on trying to build a weather bridge, an early warning bridge between the national weather agencies in urbanizing Africa and the residents of informal settlements. And it was actually back in September 2019 at the UN summit when REAP was launched that when we realized how significant the problem was. We got the baseline results from Nairobi that showed that actually almost half of the residents of Kibera, which was in line of sight of the central business district and the skyscrapers, almost half of them got no weather forecasts and simply looked up at the sky for weather information. Of course, they got no early warning information either. So we've been working to fix that problem. How have we been doing it? Perhaps you could move on to the next slide, Emma. We have been working really with actors in the system. So we've been working with the national weather agencies, but also with the residents of informal settlements and community leaders. But beyond that, with the Red Cross, with the city media, with City Hall, and tried to actually map, first of all, how information was not flowing and what the blockages were. And what you see there is the baseline map for the information ecosystem of Nairobi in terms of early warning information. And we were really interested to see just how information didn't reach the large blue circle on the right. And that was the problem that we tried to solve by collaboratively building new channels, but also improving the city forecasts and the early warnings by making them more accurate and more locally intelligible. So if we move on to the next slide, we see that 2 years on, we actually have a much more complex map where we have lots of arrows, lots of new channels, many of them unused but existing, that were chosen by the communities as channels they trusted. Also lots of blue arrows going back to the that grey circle on the left, the National Weather Agency. Those are feedback loops from the communities and from key intermediaries on the utility, the intelligibility, the accuracy of the weather forecasts and the early warnings. And the results in terms of early action, anticipatory behavior have been very strong. So 98% of the communities in the settlement we were working with took action, moved their possessions to safer places, repaired their roofs in advance of severe weather warnings. So we do have very strong and robust data to evidence the effectiveness of working in this system-wide way. We are trying to scale Daraja and actually really support Target 4 that Emma mentioned around reaching 1 billion people through more effective, inclusive early warning systems. And we can see that I think the membership of NetHope is relevant to us in 2 ways. One, the international NGOs are probably already working in the urban space. But secondly, there is a technology link as well. And Emma, if you could move on to the next slide, I'll just go through some areas of what we consider to be sort of technology relevance to our work. One is actually there's a hugely neglected data category, which is about just understanding the demographics and the user preferences, the access in terms of channels of communities. in terms of weather and early warning. It is a Cinderella data category because the exposure and the vulnerability data always takes precedence. But it's a huge challenge when you look at, say, metropolitan India or urban Nigeria, where in a city like Lagos, 55% of the population is under the age of 15. So just the analytics on that are a technology opportunity. In terms of other areas, actually, technology companies and those that understand data policy can really help unlock and combine public and private data to create value in early warning and climate services. Thirdly, there's a huge issue around communities not wanting to use their smartphones to access weather forecasts or early warnings because they have to pay for their data packages. And there's a big movement in many of the cities we're working in to create community mesh networks. In other words, to improve the digital infrastructure that supports cheaper, if not freer access. Moving on to the next slide, a couple of other areas are very impactful ways of helping communities understand through visualization, even through augmented reality, what is coming their way or may be coming their way, visualization of floods, storms, heat impacts that REAP, as Emma mentioned, is working on very intensively. And lastly, this huge area of feedback into national weather agencies from communities as to the utility, intelligibility, accuracy of weather forecasts and early warnings. This whole area of feedback management, capacity of weather agencies to manage the flow of information that we're trying to ignite, as it were, as part of accountability and user responsiveness is relevant. Moving on, our experience with REAP has been nothing but positive. REAP has helped us in multiple ways. I'll just give a couple of examples. We managed to have access through REAP in a partnership to the Climate Adaptation Summit, where two of our key stakeholders, James, the gentleman in the bottom left there, he was highlighted in a film that was showcased, premiered at the Climate Adaptation Summit, and Patricia Nying Oro, the lady in the top right-hand corner, is the chief meteorologist of the Kenya Met Department. She was brought onto a live link at the summit to discuss her experience of working on this in this inclusive way on early warning system. So we would not have had that access and that potential influence of key policymakers around climate adaptation and resilience without the REAP partnership. A second way is the marketplace that's been mentioned, which is still it's under development, but there is a de facto marketplace in play. We've through that we've had the kind of catalytic effect of getting help on a project in Jamaica to create a smartphone app and to get the backing, first of all, and financial support of the Cruise initiative, which is the big early warning initiative. That and a partnership with the Finnish Met Agency, which was helped by the Finnish government's role in REAP. And lastly, to have the engagement of the Jamaican government, the Prime Minister's office, through the REAP network. Jamaica is one of the founder governments of REAP. So that's been incredibly, I think, valuable to us. And lastly, I'd say the general learning around understanding, from say partners such as WFP and Montserrat, just to start to understand forecast-based financing, how that fits in or doesn't fit, or where the overlap is with the work we're doing in more, I think, traditional early action and early warning, and where inclusive insurance products fit in. I think just being in an arena and in a forum where we can start to get our heads around that has been very helpful too. So those are the headlines from me. I think the REAP sort of experience has been very helpful, and I very much hope that NetHope members, whether they're NGOs or technology companies, will have an opportunity to engage with REAP in the way that Resurgence has. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mark. It was really great to hear about that project. Just to remind participants, please do fire over questions or comments into the chat box, and we'll get to them after these presenters. And they don't just have to be about REAP or early action. If there's any questions you have on these projects, do fire them over. That's what we're here for. It's up to you what we discuss next. But before moving on to that, I want to move to our next presenter, is Claudia Time, who, in addition to being a VP at AXA, plays a very important strategic role in the Insurance Development Forum, which, as I mentioned, is one of REAP's key private sector partners. And Claudia is also a member of the REAP high-level board. So she's got her camera on, so you can see who you're listening to. I will pass over to Claudia to hear a little bit more about IDF. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Emma. And hi, everyone. And good to be with you today, both for the Insurance Development Forum and for REAP. We have a little time, so we'll move right on, Emma. We are a public-private partnership, and I think one of the main things that makes us effective is this role as a bridge between the public and private sectors, in a way similar to what NetHope does between technology and NGOs. Sorry, next slide, Emma, please. So these are our steering committee members, and you see on the left that we have really a lot of the major insurers and reinsurers of the world, as well as the 3 major brokers and several insurance associations from different countries and regions. The IDF is industry-led, but on the right, you see that we have also major public sector partners that we work with. And in fact, UNDP and the World Bank are co-founding partners as well. Next slide, please, Emma. So what we're about, I want to talk to you just shortly about what we insurers call the protection gap, because it relates a lot to what we do. So it's the difference between the economic losses or the total damages suffered through a disaster and what was actually insured. And here you see the numbers for natural disasters for 2020, and you see that the gap is $128 billion, which is relatively high compared with other years. On average, every year for natural disasters, it's about $83 billion. And the thing is, though, that 95% of that gap is in emerging or developing countries. So if we move on to the next slide. So what we're about, our goal very much about achieving resilience and giving protection to those that are most vulnerable to climate risk and other disasters. And our approach is by closing the protection gap. We believe that using insurance as an anticipatory way to finance disasters, to risk financing tool, actually is an important and necessary shift also in the humanitarian area, and we very much support that. Next, please. And we have representation not only from public sector, but international institutions, NGO, social and academia. And we have more than 200 experts in these 5 working groups, all very important. The ones I personally work more closely with risk modeling, and actually Mark Harvey was talking about the relevance of risk analytics and understanding risk, and that's what our risk modeling group is all about. It's actually we work with different partners in all of these working groups. I am co-chair of the Sovereign Humanitarian Solutions Working Group that actually develops solutions for governments and humanitarian organizations. It could benefit ultimately individuals, but we work with governments. Next one, please, Emma. And I'd like to give you an example of a program, because the challenge with all of this, as we probably all know, is how do we scale up, right? I mean, that protection gap means that there are people that will, when a disaster happens, will not get help quickly, will suffer greater and longer consequences. And how do we scale up and make a difference with the solutions that we have? Probably our flagship program in the IDF is this tripartite, what we call the 20 by 2025, from these three partners, German government, UNDP, and ourselves, looking to deliver technical assistance and insurance solutions to 25 countries by 2025. It is an important but clearly first step in terms of delivering solutions, and these can be projects that could be, for example, designing a government subsidized insurance program that provides social protection for very vulnerable farmers, or it could be addressing drought in specific areas, particularly for farmers, has to do with food security as well, or addressing flood in cities in Nigeria, or a project that I work on, which is designing an insurance program for public schools in Peru that also looks to include an element of building back better and accelerating reconstruction. So very broad, and always looking at the vulnerable people that we impact. Moving on, Emma, please. So the question was, why are we members of REAP? Our goals are clearly very aligned. And we as insurers see year by year what disasters do to people and the impact that this causes. And we know that taking anticipatory action, whether it is putting insurance and risk management capabilities in place or having access to the right tools, it's all extremely necessary, and not one organization or even not one sector can do it together. So for us, being members of REAP means having access to both existing but also new potential partners, but also contributing our expertise to this goal that we share. Our goal is to contribute to 500 million vulnerable people being protected by 25, and our numbers feed into the REAP goals. And so we have a natural alignment in terms of our goal and this belief in the importance of anticipatory action. And last one, Emma, please. Because really all these solutions are not only about having the capital to put in place, and we as insurers have it and have access to the market to get the capital, or having the product, and we know that our product can contribute to the stability of markets and protecting livelihoods, but also it does need technology, which is why it's so important to be talking to you. Whether it is finding a way to reach farmers in remote areas, very low income people, or being able to deliver insurance payouts to them directly, so it doesn't go through ministries and governments. We have, for example, parametric solutions that are anticipatory action that allow us to see when a drought, before a drought full onset actually takes place, that we can actually make payouts to those people so that they can buy food and ensure their livelihood. But having the right technology to reach them, having the right technology to give them those early warnings or payouts, or really different elements of what we work on together. My Peru public schools project, we're looking at how to actually know when there might be floods in each school. That is all about having the technology to measure that. We have schools from the Pacific coast to the Amazonia. So all of these elements play a role together. And that's why we're here with you today. Thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Claudia. That was really interesting. And I think, yeah, as you said at the start, IDF plays a role that's very for its sector that's very similar to NetHope. So it's really interesting to hear from you. Without further delay, I want to pass over to our final presenter, Isaac Malim from the Nexus Somalia Consortium. I've been lucky enough to interact on and off with the Nexus Consortium for some years now. They're doing really interesting work in Somalia and are always slightly ahead of the curve. They've been really vocal on meaningful localization or locally led efforts by international actors. They're not afraid to put the pressure on us. They're not afraid to speak up. And now, as usual, they're ahead of the curve on early action and are about to launch I think the world's first CSO-led anticipation fund, which is very, very exciting, not just for the areas that they will serve, but just for us to be able to say this is how it can be done, and that people are not waiting for us to deliver solutions. We just need to enable what people need to do, know what they need to do on the ground. But not to speak for Isaac, I will pass over to the man himself. Over to you. And let me get your slides up. Here we go.
Hi, thank you so much, Emma and the RIP team for having me. And good afternoon, good morning to all the panelists and the attendees who have come here. And my names are Isaac Mualim, and I'm the Nexus director. Like Emma just mentioned, Nexus is, next slide, please. Nexus is a platform that was formed in the year 2019 out of contemporary challenges that are facing local organizations in Somalia. And so the platform, which is new, and it advances the leadership of a community-driven model of partnership for promoting peaceful and empowering Somali communities. So Nexus is 8 local organizations that had come together initially, and that inspires to a locally driven change, finding common cause and synergies of intervention with partnership from the government, private sector, and international partners. So like Emma said, we want to walk the talk. So, and with this, I mentioned in Nexus and what Nexus is. I also want to acknowledge the presence of Michelle, who is in the attendees today, who has really contributed to the formation and to what Nexus is today. So next slide, please. So what about Nexus though? So like briefly mentioned, Nexus is a platform whose members are permanently within the community. Nexus are organizations that are working all across the whole of Somalia, and then Nexus with the kind of an imported idea or something that partners who are elsewhere are formed for us. Nexus now is struggling to make sure that all the experimentation of ideas and the innovation are locally or are community-based from Somalia. It is kind of a bottom-up approach. And Nexus is now making sure that the Nexus programming, where the synergy between humanitarian development and peace is actually materializes on the ground. So next slide, please. And just to be mindful of the time, Nexus is doing quite a number of locally kind of a bottom-up approach in Somalia, so that we can do what the community feel from a local perspective. So through some funds from the DRA, Nexus is now 4 Nexus members organizations are working on a program that has all the integrated ingredient of the Nexus programming, which is humanitarian development and peace. Nexus is kind of doing capacity assessment for all its members and trying to make sure that all the capacity building for organization within Nexus members are tailored to the need of the organization, and we are moving away from the classroom or the regular trainings that are being offered by other international partners, and we are trying to make sure that trainings are tailored to the need of the organizations that are members of the Nexus. We have now limited our membership to 8, but Nexus plan to expand later. We are now doing all of this under testing program. So some of the interesting innovations that are bottom up community-led or locally-led organizations are like we are trying to test our community-driven development models that will work in Somalia. We are undertaking climate change and aid dependency research in Somalia. We are now doing a localization status research, all targeting local organizations within Somalia, so that this becomes a pilot for and a benchmark for all African countries and Asians, so that this can be. We are trying all these, and then we are also developing women leadership tool for the local actors in Somalia and elsewhere. We are doing a gender audit in all our member organizations, so that we can be a very good example to all the locals. And what we walk the talk that we always say. We want to develop a standard capacity assessment tool that can be used for all across all local actors and national actors in Somalia. And lastly, and very interestingly, Nexus is now planning, is now formed and is managing an anticipatory fund that is one of its kind in Somalia. Next slide, please. So, and the reason why we partnered and we are in RIP in particular is this area where Nexus is running, managing €250 fund that is hosted by a local organization within Nexus members that is ready to act as an anticipatory kind of. We kind of develop a locally generated information that will inform us in terms of early warning system. It could be very much crude. It could be much needs a lot of developing, but it is one of its kind that was established that we established in Somalia. The Nexus anticipatory fund is ready for disperse to disperse to any emergency or anticipatory work that Nexus members will request. Recently, we requested to help us in review some of the procedures and the strategies that we develop so that we can consult them and include the inputs into the procedures and the procedure manuals that we have developed to disperse our anticipatory funds. It is still at a pilot stage, but we are so much proud of it, because we like Emma initially in the introduction said, we are not scared. We want to move. We want to make sure we walk the talk. So and that's what Nexus is now doing. Very many interesting things that I cannot mention on here, and because of time, I will move forward. So next slide, please. So for the sake of this meeting and of this discussion, what are some of the challenges that we are facing in terms of technology and in terms of making sure that local partners and local organizations are facing? So, and for the benefit of NetHub, I put together a few slides out of the other previous slides that I was presenting, and to show them exactly what challenges local partners, whenever we strive to compete with international actors, we always face challenges. And some of these challenges are software related, technology related. And a good example is what is coming next in slide. So, so this is my way, my local way, my crude way of explaining how, you know, crises happen in Somalia. They go from floods to locusts to drought to conflict, and hunger is always in between. Next slide, please. This is my way of explaining. Look at that. That's a diagram that it doesn't speak on its own, but because of the limitations that local actors have, these are some of the constraints. Next slide, please. So, like I was given a very nice opportunity recently at the Grand Bargain on a side event to present an idea, and these are slides that I presented. It could be a very nice, very real and practical from the ground. But the way we present to the world is always the most crude way, the most outdated. My slides just look like pages from Shakespeare's book, because it looked like it was not attractive, and it didn't bring out all the meaning that I wanted. Look at the map you are seeing on the screen. This is my way of explaining locust moving all the way in Somalia. If I would have had the capacity and the partnership of the developed systems where, like, Prezo or that, or even the support of a network persons who have a lot of technology understanding of this will have come out very clear and would have attracted a lot. So these are some of the challenges that we are facing for us to uplift our standard from the local and make our understanding and our work to be competitive in the global world. So next slide, please.
We're just about to run out of time now as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. And that is the last slide. And you can contact me on that. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks
so much.
all.
Thank you so much. That was a great example to end on. And I think that in REAP, we've had many similar conversations about our ability to present information in a nice way. So I just conscious that we have very little time left. I want to pass over to Ben again to talk about just a last minute kind of pitch about why we would love you to contact us, whether because you want to join REAP or to learn more about early action. And as Ben's speaking, I am going to pop a little Slido in the chat box. We'd love if you answered some of the questions in it. We've also put our, they should take you 1 minute, I think. And we've also put our contact details in the chat box. We really, really would love to hear from you with as many questions, queries, and challenges as possible. So over to you, Ben, to wrap up.
Thanks, Emma, and thank you to all our speakers today. Fantastic presentations to give a sense of the breadth and the depth of the partnership. As Emma mentioned, we would love to hear from you. Obviously, NetHope brings a lot of skills and capacities and areas of expertise, which would be incredibly valuable when it comes to early warning, early action. So if you do have questions or you are interested in the partnership, then please do reach out via the contact details in the chat box. And we would love to continue the conversation with you. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to NetHope for offering us this platform. And we will hopefully continue the conversation soon. So have a great day or great evening, and we'll be in touch again soon.
Thank you, Ben. And thank you to all our speakers once again, and thank you very much to the audience for participating today. Please do complete the webinar satisfaction survey that will pop up as you close out of the Zoom window. We appreciate your feedback, and we hope that you will take a minute to fill that out. Also, that a follow-up email will be coming later today that will include links to all of the collateral and a recording for this session. So please share that with your colleagues. And as Ben mentioned, have a great rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Thank you, bye.
Bye.